Working in kitchens, it was a very high pressure, high stress environment. And when I say I was like a version of a Gordon Ramsay, I mean that more like with the personality. I was taught to be very fiery. I was praised for being fiery. If someone made a mistake, I was told to make sure they knew they had made a mistake.
You fell into the online space because you wanted the freedom and choice away from the fancy chef job. So I want to really hear that moment that you decided, I want to stop this job because it's a big step.
And my friend told me there was a business opportunity attached. And I just laughed. I literally said to her, do you know how much money I'm making being a yacht chef right now? I don't need more money. What I needed and what these people probably need is more time, freedom, more choice. So for the next 5 years, I started building my online business. So I started my own coaching. So the biggest thing I learned this year was that inner work is an income producing activity. You don't have to, or I learned that I didn't have to work all day like I was on yachts to get the six-figure income.
What's the most common fear and block you see in the women you work with?
The self-doubt, the I'm not good enough, and the fear of judgment from others are probably those top three.
Get ready to meet Sheree, a woman who traded her high pressure life as a luxury yacht chef to becoming a transformative mindset and freedom coach. From being a completely high strung chef, just like Gordon Ramsay in her luxury kitchens, Sheree invested over $100,000 in her own personal development. And she is a living testament to show you how a perfectionist becomes a powerhouse to help people elevate themselves. So, whether you're feeling trapped in your career, dreaming of making a bold change, or just seeking inspiration, I know that you're going to get practical wisdom from Sheree that could transform the way you think about your path to freedom. Enjoy. Sheree, welcome to Thrive Talks.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Beautiful. How are you today?
Yeah, good. Thanks. It's a lovely day in Bali, another hot one, but I'm grateful for the sun always.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, I love the sun myself, so no complaints there.
Yeah.
All right. So we have so much to cover because your life has been a beautiful roller coaster, and I want the viewers to see and hear everything about it. It's not that, you've had just a chef experience, but you've got yachting experience and you've got now a business where you coach people, right? But rolling it back a little bit, because I know whenever I see a person done so much in their life, it all stems back from their childhood as well, and family dynamics, etc., right? Which paves the way to where they stand today. So, how was your family dynamics? I know you grew up in a family of four. Your dad was a very successful businessman. How was it for you?
Yeah. So as you said, family of four, my mum, my dad, my sister who's 2 years younger than me. And I grew up in a family where, my dad was working for someone else. So I saw him working as like a manager of a supermarket up until I was like 13. My mum was like the typical housewife, right? Staying home, looking after kids. And when I was 13 and they brought their mini supermarket or what we call a dairy in New Zealand, not a farm, it's a mini supermarket. So many people, when I say they're a dairy, they're like, oh, wow, a farm? And I was like, no, no, no. They brought that when we were 13. Well, when I was 13, my sister was 11. And then my mum started, working in that as well. And we were a bit older. So I guess we were a little bit more independent. But yeah, I grew up in that kind of dynamic where it did shift from just the dad was working what you would probably call very stereotypical in the 80s. The dad working, the mum staying at home, looking after the kids, then moving into both parents working owning and running a business, which became very successful. They had a few different dairies slash mini supermarkets over the years. And that really, I feel, was like paving the way for me to really see the entrepreneurial journey and the entrepreneurial opportunity. And I didn't really understand it back then, but now
Hmm.
reflecting, I see like, you know, I saw my dad shift from working from someone else to buying his own thing and running his own company for so many years. And I saw my mum change her, like not having a career working from home to then doing something completely different. So I guess those kind of dynamics really empowered me and impressed upon me the potential that anyone can change their life at any given moment and
Hmm.
decide something different for themselves, which is actually really cool now that I reflect upon it in this very given moment.
That's fantastic because you've touched upon something that people think that, oh, you need to fit a box and you need to do a certain thing and you can't change. But you had the privilege, now that you think retrospectively, of seeing how things can shift and everything has a potential.
Yeah.
But for you were a shy child, right? And you actually weren't as outgoing as people would think now. And you did things to fit in, which every child, as a teenager, as a young child, you'd want to do things to fit in. What was that moment where you thought, like, yeah, you know what? This enough is enough. Like, I don't want to like go and follow the herd. And you had dreams of culinary school and at like 12, you wanted to be a chef. So
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
did that change? Like, what was that thing that shifted the trajectory for you?
Ooh. Do you mean like shifted it into really wanting to become a chef or like
Yeah,
just change
chef
the person?
and out, like being a chef means going out there. It's not like the typical, oh, let me be an accountant or a doctor or whatever, You're like, oh, okay, let me be a chef. That's out there in the 80s and 90s.
So funny because for me it doesn't feel like it was. And that's the whole cool thing about perception, right? Like for me, becoming a chef felt very easy. And I guess when I was about 12, one of my dad's employees was going to culinary school and working at a really nice cafe back in Nelson where I grew up. And I was like, wow, I'm really interested in food. I'd always been passionate about baking and things like that and cooking, interested in food and being adventurous with that. So I was like, wow, I want to do this. It just kind of clicked. So from 12,
Mm.
I knew I wanted to be a chef. And then I enrolled into culinary school as soon as I finished high school. So I enrolled into culinary school in the year 2000. And so for 20 years, I was cooking, which is pretty wild. But yeah, it was just a passion. It didn't feel hard for me. And I guess this is so interesting to dive into the perspectives of things that people think are outgoing because there's other jobs I could think of that are more outgoing, more harder. For me, a chef seemed very easy, which is wild, right?
And which shows that if you're passionate about something, you can really excel in it. And that's what you showcase, right? For me, like, I come from a background where it was just like, these three, four domains that you had: engineering, medicine. You didn't have things like that could broaden your perspective. And being a chef, it's like, was that even a profession?
Yeah.
But, like what you just said, you loved it. And your love made you take that bold move, per se, to go into the world of cooking, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There was just a passion, and I wasn't really going to tolerate doing anything else. I wasn't excited about anything else. Chefing was a no brainer for me. It was just like a soul aligned yes.
And your parents are fine with it.
Yeah. I mean, chefing was reflecting upon it, like chefing was quite a good profession back then. I mean, it still is today, of course,
Yeah.
but chefing was seen as a good profession because everyone always needs to eat, right? It's never going
Mm.
to be something that runs out, like
Mm.
a career that runs out.
Beautiful. And yeah,
Yeah.
like, to think about it, it is a very glamorous role now. So let's get to the cooking side of you, right?
Yeah.
From being a pub cook to a high-end chef like Gordon Ramsay, which we'll touch upon later, to being a yacht chef. Your whole journey is pretty fascinating because you've gone through so many dips. I want to first ask you, like, what was the most challenging part of being a chef and how was it to be as a chef? Because I've seen MasterChef Australia and I know the bedlam that goes behind the whole thing. I've always been like very fascinated, but how was
Yeah.
that phase of your life?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And, working in kitchens, it was a very high pressure, high stress environment. And when I say I was like a version of a Gordon Ramsay, I mean that more like with the personality. I was taught to be very fiery. I was praised for being fiery. I had some mentors that had been trained by Gordon Ramsay and Marco Pierre White. So they were like, Sheree, we're going to train you to be a chef de partie, which is a high level chef. You do different ranks. What is it? Commis, demi, chef de partie, sous chef, head chef. So chef de partie's like
Mhm.
third in charge. So they wanted to train me up to be like an English style chef de partie when I was working in Australia. So I was trained to be very like pushy, aggressive, and I was praised for that. I was
Wow.
praised for acting like that kind of person. So that kind of just became my persona inside and outside of the kitchen. So, yeah, chefing was high level, high stress for many, many years of my career. And then things really shifted when I moved into yachting because that was a different kind of industry. You can't be aggressive, pushy. It's not all about you when you're on a yacht. There's so many different factors with the sailing and things that go on that I really had to learn how to be like a nice person in kitchens. And I just had to lose that sense of my ego where the chef was always right, the chef was always in charge. And it happened very quickly when I was on yachts. Like I dare say within a week. And then as time like moved on, I started to just lose that like angry, stressed out personality that was running almost 24/7 and especially in kitchens because I
Right.
always wanted to get things right. I was never like allowed myself to make a mistake. Nothing was ever perfect. So coming from that kind of industry, then yeah, to get yourself off it is quite an interesting journey for sure.
Wow. And touching base on that, right? That I've always seen like, yeah, I can imagine you high strung, volatile, Gordon Ramsay just abusing the employees. I mean, does that still pertain in very high end restaurants? I know it's a controversial question, but does this still, and why does it need to be that way? Is there a particular, why are people trained to be so harsh?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't cooked in a restaurant, I dare
Hmm.
say, in like, it would be like 15 years. I've not
Okay.
cooked in a restaurant in 15 years, so I actually have no idea what it's like in kitchens anymore. And to be fair, not all kitchens are that way. When I cooked a little bit in Australia, when I was, because I do 3-day charters on the yachts and then I'd come to land and I'd have a few days free and I'd support one of my friends in a cafe doing the breakfast shift. It wasn't like that sort of environment. And I myself was very chill, very relaxed.
Hmm.
The power was going off, which means we only had gas to cook everyone breakfast. And it was just very chill for me. And one of my friends was like, I don't even know who you are because she worked with me when I was like a bit of a psycho chef. And, it's just like, who is this? So I don't know what restaurants are like now. Why? I think it's the way people were taught. I was taught to be
Hmm.
ruthless, not to the point of like fully shouting at people, but if someone made a mistake, I was told to make sure they knew they had made a mistake kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I think it's all from the training, much like we're a result of our childhood at times, our actions. because we're modeling what we're seeing. I think it's the same in kitchens. People model
Wow.
what they see. So if you've been around those high-end chefs who have been trained that way, that's what you're going to see. But if you've been, if you're around other chefs that have had different training and have learned a different way of being and acting,
Mm.
then you're going to have a different experience. So I don't believe it's all kitchens.
It's all kitchens. But what was the most challenging part of working in such a high pressure job? Because you know that you've got to put food out, for people. So what
Yeah.
was the most challenging bit of chefing?
Yeah. I mean, in kitchens, it was the long days and not having control about what you're cooking. So, the menu's the same all year round, right? Or maybe you do a seasonal change. Cooking the same thing every day was getting a bit boring. The long
Mm.
hours, the split shifts, I didn't love. With yachting, it was probably the longer days and being on charter for weeks on end sometimes, It wasn't
Wow.
so much like split shifts. It was like the guests could be on for 12 weeks, which they were once, and that's the longest trip I've ever done and will ever do. But yeah, they can be on for 3 to 12 weeks. So that not having any control of like my time freedom, my choices of
Mm.
where I wanted to live, who I got to live with, that was probably the hardest thing, especially towards the end of my yachting career for sure.
So it's basically no work-life balance eventually that leads to burnout. And so is it like a very sustainable career if you'd see from your experience, not anyone else's? Would it be pretty sustainable for a person to be a chef for like 20, 25 years with just so much of pressure, ongoing pressure?
I mean, I definitely think so. If you
Hmm.
look after yourself 100%. And I feel like everyone is getting so conscious now, even chefs, hospitality workers, all
Hmm.
that. If you're really looking after yourself, doing that self care, grounding, doing the inner work, because me being a chef in a restaurant right now would be a completely different version, right? Because of all the work I've done on
Hmm.
myself. So I believe it is if you've got the right tools and the right resources and you have your own boundaries, like say in a restaurant, maybe you're only available for a certain amount of days, or say on a yacht with yachting, you can actually do freelance. So you can have a little bit more like, okay, I'll just do this trip, then I'll have time off. And then in that time off, you have the self-care, not the going and having a €300 rosé lunch per person, but going and doing like actual self care, like massages, grounding, time in nature, doing a beautiful retreat, some fitness exercise, whatever it is, like real grounding, real self care. So I definitely believe with the right tools, the right
Hmm.
resources, it can be a sustainable career 100%.
Beautiful. And I think that's a gold nugget for those who really want to get into chefing. But now
Yeah.
let's move into the juicy part. The yacht chefing life of yours, the most glamorous thing that people see on Instagram, the pristine waters, the millionaires club, traveling the world, going to amazing places. But you say that it was great, but you felt trapped. I want you to paint a picture.
Yeah, of course. So I did yachting for about 15 years and then and then about an extra 5 years in the wet Sundays.
Wow,
So
20 years.
that was more like 3 day, 3 night charters. And then I did fifteen years of just traveling the world, working on larger super yachts and motor yachts in the Med, the Caribbean, the States, all that sort of jazz. And at the start, it was very glamorous. It was very exciting. And I loved it. I was seeing so much. I didn't have any expenditures in my life. Oh, I had a car, but I paid that off very, very quickly. Because I wasn't paying rent, I wasn't paying for food, I wasn't paying for alcohol that I drank on the boat. It was like this new exciting lifestyle. Now, I'd always been a traveler, so it wasn't really tricky to be away from my friends and family for long periods of time at that point. And for about 7 years of my career, I never thought I wanted to do anything different,
Mm.
but then it started to like weigh on me. I was like, well, when I'm 65, do I really want to be retiring, sleeping in a bunk bed cabin? Do I really want to have someone dictating my days? Do I really want to be, cooking all day, every day? I mean, if the guests weren't on, I had the weekends off, don't get me wrong. So I wasn't cooking every day all the time, but I was like, is this really what I want for my life? And I knew I wanted like more of a life on land, more time freedom, more choice. And I
Mm.
wasn't getting that working day in and day out. And yes, we get to see many glamorous places. I mean, Saint Tropez, the Billionaires Club, and where was it? St. Bart's, like all the beach clubs, Nikki Beach, Puro Beach, all that sort of jazz, right? And it's very exciting. It's very glamorous. But a lot of the time, you're just seeing that from your porthole. Or as a chef, I got to like go into the towns and do like a supermarket run, which was amazing because I love seeing local produce. Anytime I go to a new country, I will go to the markets, the supermarket, even the 7-Eleven, because I love seeing what different countries have, right? But I realized that wasn't how I wanted to see the world. I wanted to see it and actually go there and actually see it, not just be working from it and taking some really cool selfies.
Wow. And a lot of people are not courageous enough to tell that because, I mean, you get paid amazing because you're working such hours and, you are with the elite per se, and people feel like, oh, wow, that's the dream job.
Yeah.
But of course, I think you knew that you came to a point where you valued yourself, you valued your personal life, and you wanted a good balance of work and play.
Hmm.
Am I right to say that? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
first, post all this hoops and loops and jump, you fell into the online space because you
Yeah.
wanted the freedom and choice away from the fancy chef job. So I want to really hear that moment that you decided, yeah, I want to stop this job because it's a big step. Or was it like, were you still chefing while getting into the online space? How was the whole
Yeah.
dynamic there?
I yeah, that's a really good question. So I actually did it at the same time. I did the online stuff while still being on the yachts. And that's the biggest piece of advice I can give is start something before you're ready because I see so many people leaving their industries, then starting something online. And sometimes things take time to build.
Hmm.
Sometimes they don't, but there is a skill set that gets to be learnt before you start, becoming really successful online or what your version of success is. So for me, I had the opportunity. So I started using these shakes, these supplements with a company called Isogenics, and I loved them. And my friend told me there was a business opportunity attached. And I just laughed. I literally said to her, do you know how much money I'm making being a yacht chef right now? I don't need more money. And we just left it like that, right? And I kept using the products because it was true. I honestly didn't need any more money. I couldn't spend what I had. Money was not something I wanted for. And I'm not saying
Mm.
that from a place of like, oh, look at me. It just was my reality. I didn't need it. So I really feel for these people that are prospecting, people that have these six-figure jobs. They don't need more money. What I needed and what these people probably need is more time, freedom, more choice. So I used these products for another like 6, 7 months. And then um, I was about to go on charter the next day and my grandmother passed away back in New Zealand. Now I couldn't go because I was about to start a charter with the boss. We didn't have anyone to fill in. Um, it would have been quite a mission to get from Antigua to New Zealand for sure. And me leaving would not have just given up my job, but also my home. And I just didn't feel like I had the choice. I was like, okay. And my family were like, no, don't come. It's such a long way. There was nothing I could do now, right? But I decided in that moment that I was no longer going to be put in a position where I had to decide that again and that I would have my choice back. So it was over the next few years where I thought, okay, I'm going to start taking this online thing seriously. So for the next 5 years, I started building my online business. I
Mm.
did the shakes and supplements with isogenics. I started my own coaching, mainly for strategy back then, all about marketing and strategy, because people saw me having success
Mm.
online and they're like, okay, what are you doing? What's your marketing? What's your branding? How are you learning all this? So I started doing one on one coaching with that, and it was amazing and so much fun. And about 3 years into that, I started to get more time freedom. I'd take paid time off from the boat when the guests weren't on. I would do a little bit more freelancing. So, maybe doing like a few racing regattas, then come home to my apartment in Palma. And it was amazing. But that was my line in the sand moment for sure.
Hmm. And that's a fantastic piece of advice that you've given, because a lot of people just quit cold turkey and then try to figure out. And I think money is a huge block for everybody. Let's be very honest. And, when you're doing something and money's taken care of, but then build that skill set and try something new, you just have
Mhm.
that cushion, which mentally helps you. I mean, you could take the other way as well, cold turkey, but
Yeah.
I genuinely and personally resonate with this message that you have a foundation, have a basic finance foundation set so that if you really want to, like, if everything fails, you have something to support yourself to bounce back again. Because it is, at the end of the day, money is a tool to get to your goal. And I love that advice, genuinely, Sheree.
Yeah.
So,
Beautiful.
is it safe to say that the freedom of choice is what drove all these major transitions of your life, from being, from chefing to yachts, chefing to now building your own online business, and now literally you've gone into like mindset coaching and helping women,
Yeah.
release their fears and blocks, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you one thing, because I know, yeah, you've invested more than six figures in your own personal development, right? And
Yeah.
worked with a Balinese healer, attended plant medicine retreats, which I find, very fascinating, because it's like this trajectory of personal development and spiritual development.
Yeah.
What's been the most mind blowing or unexpected lesson you've learned from this? Because I want viewers to see that when you invest so much in yourself, you get profound benefits.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, oh, shivers. That's a lot of a lot of high winds in a lot of years. What comes through to share is probably something that came through in Peru in the plant medicine retreat a few years ago. That love is always the answer. Like that was something that came through really deeply within the plant medicine retreat. And then another one would be like just really rewiring my beliefs that I'm not good enough, I don't know enough, self doubt,
Mm.
rewiring that with things like timeline therapy. That was profound because that's what supported me this year in stepping into the one on one coaching space again and really skyrocketed my results. And I see how through the years when I've done it, it's really supported me to go to that next level. So I'd say the timeline therapy and rewiring the events that had caused me to believe I'm not good enough, I don't know enough, the fear of judgment. But, and yeah, the number one thing I'd probably say that love is the answer that came through at the plant medicine retreat in Peru a few years back.
Love is the answer. Can you give like an instance where you've implemented this?
I mean, I guess any time when I feel a little bit of like scarcity or lack, or is this really working for me? I'm like, well, what's really the truth? The truth is love, and love will always come through. Right?
Okay. And that's very different from, what's the stereotypical answers I hear from entrepreneurs, but because it's challenging being an entrepreneur. Yeah, being your own boss, you've got all the freedom, but now you've got to put systems in place, you need the finances, etc., etc. So
Mhm.
once you step back into your one-on-one, what were the new challenges that it brought in front of you?
Yeah.
Because now you don't have like the yachting income coming in, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess this year when I fully stepped into the one on one,
Hmm.
what supported me most was having mentors in the beginning. when I decided not to take that second contract. So I had someone support me with the inner work and someone supporting me with the strategy. So I started to get systems in place. I started to learn how I could launch and relaunch my coaching packages and offers, how I could share my affiliate marketing offers. So the biggest thing I learned this year was that, and what was it? Inner work is an income producing activity. You know, you don't have to, or I learned that I didn't have to work all day like I was on yachts to get the six-figure income, which I've proved to be true because I haven't worked that long a days. There'll be times when I'm busy for sure, but I without a shadow of a doubt, have not done 12 or 18 hour days this year as an entrepreneur. So I was
Wow.
really dialing in on the must do's, the daily methods of operation that I knew I had to do to keep myself consistent. But also learning that, okay, if I feel the call to rest, then I get to rest. Resting is an
Mm.
income producing activity. Self-care is an income producing activity. That was probably one of the biggest things I learned this year.
And I've personally seen you being a very, you're a go-getter, but now you've reformed into a go-getter, but taking pauses in your life. I mean, this is a woman, ladies and gentlemen, who quit her yachting career, has a beautiful piece of land in Costa Rica, which she's paid up for because she knew that she wanted to be and do certain things in her manner, and she had all the resources within her to show up for those goals. And I think you've done a lot of your own inner healing and clearing of blocks that now you work with women entrepreneurs, helping them overcome their fears and blocks, right, Sheree?
Yeah.
So this is my question to you. What's the most common fear and block you see in the women you work with?
Yeah. The self-doubt, the I'm not good enough, and the fear of judgment from others are probably those
Mm.
top three. They're very, I feel like, across the board.
And this is what I've seen in women, and I always love contemplating on this, right? Because I also had all three, like clear cut. But of course, every life challenge like dissolved it for me, like judgment or what will the society say. That went ahead when I dissolved my toxic marriage. But the other bits and pieces, it's so woven deep within people that they don't even know that they keep on judging themselves, the imposter syndrome, something good's coming in their life and they just self-sabotage the entire thing, right? Do you
Yeah.
have like a story of a woman, like a client success story that you can share? Because I'm pretty sure viewers would be really eager to hear this.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And you're so right. We don't often know our blocks. And that's
Mm.
the whole reason we need someone else to support us, to ask the questions, especially to our subconscious brain, so we can get the answers. Because if you're asking yourself, what's my block? You're asking the conscious brain, right? Which doesn't always give us the answers we want. So you want to make sure that, yeah, having someone else to support you is key. So just tuning into, gosh, there's been so many amazing transformations, but I had a woman who, thought she had to work hard for money. She thought she didn't deserve money. She had the fear of being seen. So showing up on social media was not something she wanted to do. And she'd been in her business for 2 years. So we rewired like the fear of judgment, the fear of being seen, the limiting beliefs around money. And within weeks of doing that, she had 2 new high ticket sales in her affiliate marketing business and 2 new coaching clients. And she claims that that was her biggest business breakthrough growth to date from us doing that breakthrough work. And I think there's so many other testimonials, but that is one of my favorites. We also rewired. She had triggers around a certain song. I supported her to rewire that. And then she was able to release the triggers from that event. So now she hears that song and nothing happens. She's not triggered. Like, it's amazing what this timeline therapy and the quantum healing energetic stuff can do.
And people don't give much emphasis to energy healing, quantum. The moment they hear all this, they're like, oh, that's a lot of woo woo stuff, because I think there's a deep rooted fear within them itself that what's going to show up if I do this, and I think probably that's why they discard it or whatever. But I think what you said is top notch, because if you don't work on your energetics, that is your mental state, your emotional state, I don't think you can show up as a different person, as your true self. That is, which is different from the masks that we keep on wearing, which for me, I really wanted to ask you this question, that when you look back on your journey, right? You were a shy child wearing a mask. Now you're such a confident coach who courageously tells that, yeah, I was a high strung chef, but I didn't know better back then. But now I help people manage their emotions. What advice would you give to someone who feels stuck wearing a mask in their current career?
Yeah, I love that. Beautiful question. So I'd just say to that person that it's totally safe to be yourself. You're always going to attract the people that are like minded. So I just invite you to show up as you are, because you're such a gift as you are. Whether you believe it now or not, eventually you will. And just invite you to know that anything's possible when you start shifting the beliefs that are keeping you stuck with that mask on, which tends to be I'm not good enough, fear of judgment.
Mm.
But just know that we all go through these kind of things. But it's really safe for you to show up as your authentic self, and you'll always attract the people that are like-minded in friendships, relationships, business, all layers, right? I'm not just talking about one layer, I'm talking about all layers.
Fantastic. And if there's someone who feels stuck but doesn't have the money resource, what's the one simple, small step that they can do to really step up to being their best self?
Yeah. I mean, clarity is king. There's so much transformation that comes from getting raw and real with where you're at now. So I just invite you to go, look, okay, where am I now? Where do I want to be in 3 to 6 months? If I was to know what's stopping or blocking me, and just brain dump everything that's blocking you. Because when you see it, it's a gift to see it. It
Mm.
means it's already started to dissolve because you're witnessing it, whether you believe it or not. That's what's happening. And just know that there's nothing wrong with where you're at now, and things get to shift quite rapidly. So I just invite people to do that exercise. Just write it down, get raw and real with where you're at, and envision. So once you've done that, then envision the person, that version of you, that future version of yourself, out in 3 to 6 months' time that's achieved what you want to desire. And just notice how they're being. That's the whole key to embodiment. And embodiment is free. You don't have to pay anything to embody that future version of yourself. So invite you to, just kind of visualize, what's that version of you look like? How does she walk? How does she talk? How does she think? How does she act? How does she think about herself? How does she show up daily? All those exciting things. Notice what's different about you and that version of her or you that's achieved what you wanted, and start acting from that place now, not from a fake it till you make it kind of jazz, but from a place of embodiment and full trust, because this is what supports people to quantum shift. Full trust, full embodiment from that future version of yourself that's achieved the goals you desire. I mean, that's key. And that's something simple, potent, powerful, and it doesn't cost you anything except for some of your time.
Great. Quick question. What if someone's hearing it right now and goes like, oh no, I can't do it? What's your advice for them? Because I know a lot of people would start thinking from their mind, and the mind would just shut them up.
That you can't do it. Well, I really believe, especially with the NTT training and stuff that I've done, is that everything's a choice. I've seen people go through some of the darkest stuff and have chosen to let go of it. So we can choose to do anything, right? So whatever you choose to do will be done. So you can choose to stay where you are and choose to tell yourself you can't do it, or you can choose to tell yourself that you can and start taking different actions. It's all up to you.
And I love it. Why? Because I think we guys are byproducts of that. We chose to have a better life. Yes,
Yeah.
we had challenges. Yes, we had nervous breakdowns. Yes, we had everything, but we consciously tuned into our intention of being better, chose better actions, better decisions, made mistakes, no problem. But if you don't try, you will not know how amazing it feels to be on the other side of after trying it.
Yeah.
So, Sheree, thank you so much for that. But I just wanted to ask you this cliche question, which, would just be like, oh my God, why is she asking this? But that's why I've written it down and I want to read it word to word.
Okay.
If your journey was a recipe, what would be the key ingredients and what's the secret sauce that ties it all together into a
Oh, I
delicious
love it.
dish?
I love it. I love it. I love it. That's beautiful. I reckon like making a decision, deciding what I wanted, and taking courageous action, taking action to get to where I wanted to be. Right? I didn't get there by just to where I am now of time, freedom, choice, living in Bali, working remote, supporting 8-figure entrepreneurs by just sitting around. I
Mm,
decided I wanted a different life and I took action. I wasn't just hoping, wishing, and praying. I took action. And then I would dare say the secret sauce is also trust that it is working out perfectly for me. In times where I didn't maybe think it was, but when I leant back into trust, that's when things like exploded to another level in the positive for me.
absolutely perfect. And I think one more thing that I'd love to add is your inner circle. And of course, I met Sheree through a course that we did, and she's a part of my inner circle that inspires and empowers you to become better, to be
Mm-hmm.
better, because they're also on the same path. And sometimes when you relate to people, you can just be like, oh, if she can do it, so can I. And
Yeah.
yes, community is a very important part. So, and if you love even more of a coaching session, all the details of Sheree would be below in the show notes. But any imparting last words from you, Sheree, for the viewers?
Oh, I mean, what really comes through is just trust whatever you want to do and just take action on that. Just commit, decide, take action, knowing that you are more than good enough. You have all the answers inside of you. Like, but if you don't like ask the question or take the action, then nothing's going to change. It's really not. So I just want to share that. Like, just take action and decide and know that you're so more than good enough.
Guys, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Remember
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Cliche, but it's so right. It's so right.
Shireen, thank you once again for saying yes and showing up. And guys, we're going to have her once again, where I genuinely want to deep dive with her into neurotransformational therapy that she's done, because I know you guys are going to get so much out of it. I've not asked her, but I've already announced it. So we might do a session now. But if you need help, if you need support, her details are in the show notes. You can always comment below. But Sheree, thank you for sharing your story, because I know people relate so much when they hear someone's story and they feel
Yeah.
much more empowered. So thank you for saying yes, and thank you for showing up on Tribe Talks.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. It's been so beautiful. So beautiful.
That's it for today, folks. If you found value in this conversation, go ahead and apply it in your life or share it with someone who really needs to hear this message. And while you're at it, please hit that subscribe button to stay updated on more inspiring stories. Interested in upleveling yourself? You can join our community, Burnout Breakers. The link is in the show notes for all the details. Until next time, keep thriving, and keep growing.